Long before Rome, long before Greece, there rose a line of kings so feared, so powerful, that the ancient world called them gods of war. These were not ordinary rulers. These were the warrior pharaohs, kings who fought not from behind the throne, but on the front lines of battle, and their rise reshaped the destiny of Egypt and the world. Before the warrior pharaohs came to power, Egypt stood at a breaking point. The old kingdoms had collapsed. Foreign invaders roamed the land. The Nile cities were divided, broken, and desperate. Egypt was no longer a mighty empire. It was a shadow of its former self, weakened by internal strife and humbled by foreign powers. The very soul of the kingdom was at risk. Egypt needed more than just a ruler. Egypt needed a warrior. And from this chaos, a hero emerged. A man whose name history would never forget. Ahmose. He was the father of the warrior pharaohs. He was young, untested, but his spirit burned with a fire that would reignite the nation. He saw his homeland fractured and vowed to reclaim Egypt or die trying. The challenge was immense. The northern lands were controlled by invaders, known as the Hyksos. They were a formidable enemy, possessing advanced military technology that Egypt had never encountered before. Deadly composite bows, bronze armor, and most terrifying of all, the horse-drawn chariot. This new form of warfare had given them a devastating advantage. But Ahmose refused to bow. He wasn't just fighting an enemy. He was fighting to restore honor to a fallen civilization. He began his campaign by uniting the southern cities, forging a coalition of resistance against the occupiers. He rallied his people, trained new armies, and adopted the enemy's own weapons, creating his own chariot corps. He also forged crucial alliances with fierce Nubian warriors from the south. Their skill in archery legendary. For the first time in centuries, Egypt marched as one unified force. The war that followed was brutal. The battles were long and bloody. Cities burned, and thousands fell on both sides. But Ahmose, leading from the front, pushed forward relentlessly. His determination was infectious, inspiring his soldiers to fight with a ferocity they didn't know they possessed. He drove the Hyksos back, city by city, until he cornered them in their capital, Avris. After a long siege, he broke their defenses, drove them out of Egypt for good, and restored the throne of the pharaohs. This monumental victory wasn't just the end of a war. It was the birth of the new kingdom and the dawn of a new era. It marked the rise of Egypt's deadliest warrior kings. After Ahmose, a line of rulers followed who would transform Egypt from a recovering nation into a global superpower. The first was Thutmose. A military genius who expanded Egypt's borders beyond its traditional boundaries for the first time in history. He wasn't content with just defending Egypt. He wanted to project its power. He marched his armies deep into Nubia, conquering new territories and securing valuable gold mines. He then turned his sights north, storming into Syria and planting Egypt's flag on the banks of the Euphrates River. He carved Egypt's new empire with his sword, setting a new standard for what it meant to be a pharaoh. But the greatest of them all was yet to come. Thutmose III, often called the Napoleon of ancient Egypt. He was, without question, the most accomplished military commander in Egyptian history. Over his long reign, he led an astonishing 17 military campaigns, and he won every single one. He was a brilliant strategist, inventing new battle tactics, mastering siege warfare, and perfecting the use of the chariot as a mobile strike force. His campaigns were swift, decisive, and devastating. He built an empire that stretched from deep within Africa all the way to the heart of the Middle East. Under his rule, tribute and trade poured into Egypt from across the known world, making it the wealthiest and most powerful nation on earth. But the warrior legacy wasn't reserved only for kings. One of Egypt's greatest and most fascinating rulers was a woman, Hatshepsut, the warrior queen. After her husband's death, she ruled not just as a regent for her young stepson, but as a pharaoh in her own right. To solidify her authority in a male-dominated world, she adopted all the symbols of kingship. She dressed in the traditional regalia of a pharaoh, wore the symbolic false beard, and commanded Egypt's armies with unmatched authority. While she was a capable military leader, her greatest legacy was one of peace and prosperity. She led ambitious trade expeditions, most famously to the land of Punt, bringing back exotic goods that dazzled her people. She was also a prolific builder, commissioning magnificent temples and monuments that still stand today. Her rise proved that the spirit of a warrior was not bound by gender, but by courage and the will to lead. Of course, no story of the warrior pharaohs is complete without mentioning the legend himself. Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great, the pharaoh of pharaohs. His reign was defined by one of the most epic confrontations in ancient history. The Battle of Kadesh. He faced the mighty Hittite Empire, a rival superpower vying for control of the Middle East. It was a clash of titans. Over 5,000 chariots and tens of thousands of warriors gathered on the battlefield, with the fate of both empires hanging in the balance. In a bold but reckless move, Ramses charged headfirst into the enemy lines, only to be ambushed and surrounded. He was nearly killed, and his armies nearly collapsed. But in that desperate moment, Ramses rallied his forces, fighting with legendary fury, and managed to turn the tide of the battle. He returned to Egypt a hero, and though the battle was technically a stalemate, he portrayed it as a stunning personal victory. He built towering temples, statues, and monuments all across Egypt to honor his triumphs and to remind the world forever who the true warrior king was. For more than 400 years, Egypt ruled as the world's greatest empire, all thanks to the warrior pharaohs. They reshaped Africa and the Middle East. They built cities, temples, and armies that stood unmatched for centuries. Their rise marked a golden age of power, wealth, and culture. Their battles forged a nation, and their legacy lives on in stone, in legend, and in our collective memory. This is the story of how Egypt became an empire of warriors, and how the warrior pharaohs rose to shape the ancient world forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories from our incredible past.